Hi boys and girls, it's Mrs. Bierman here again with another art project. Today's inspiration is an artwork by Pablo Picasso called the Bouquet of Flowers or the Bouquet of Peace. I hope you enjoy working with me and creating with me again today. Here's what you are going to need. You are going to need some sort of white piece of paper and some sort of coloring material. You may also want a piece of construction paper in which you'll cut out hands from that. I'm going to be working with watercolor paints. I think that's the most exciting for this project, but if you don't have those available, you can just use crayons, colored pencils, or markers as well. If you are going to be using watercolor paints, the thicker the white paper, the better. If you use the computer paper, it might just not blend as well. It might dry a little bit quicker. So I do suggest a piece of construction paper, or better yet, a piece of watercolor paper. That is up to you. Otherwise, you might just need scissors, glue sticks, depending on what parts of this project you're going to do. Maybe a circle tracer if you have one, but you certainly do not need one. Go ahead and gather those materials. You'll hear next some information about Pablo Picasso and some of his very famous artwork, and I will see you to start creating soon. His name is Pablo Picasso. Pablo Picasso was born in Malaga, Spain in 1881. He was a Spanish painter. Picasso's father was an art teacher, and Picasso at an early age showed interest in drawing. At just 7 years old, he began receiving art lessons from his father. At just the age of 8, he had already painted this picture. When Picasso was 19, he went and moved to Paris. There, he learned to speak French, and by just 24 years old, he had already become famous in the art world. He and another artist, Braque, invented a type of art called Cubism. Here are some of his famous paintings. Do you see the different geometric shapes? How the paintings are broken up? Look at all of the colors. The next artwork is the Bouquet of Flowers, or the Bouquet of Peace, that is an inspiration for our artwork today. One of my favorite quotes is by Pablo Picasso. All children are artists. The problem is how to remain an artist once they grow up. We are back to start creating. I have my workspace all set up, and I'm going to tilt my camera down so you can see what I'm doing. Now, I am going to be talking a lot about very simple shapes, and this is for some of our younger artists who are still practicing and learning how to do certain shapes. You can really do the flowers any way that you would like to, but we can also keep it very simple as well. So as I tilt this down, you will see my top of my paper is up here, and we're going to work to trace or draw 4 circles on my paper. Hopefully you'll be able to see them. One thing you want to really make sure of is that you space them out. So I'm making sure I can fit like 3 fingers in between my flowers, because one thing we're all gonna have fun doing is adding the petals, and we wanna make sure we have enough room for beautiful petals, larger petals on some of them. So I have 3 here. I am going to add 1 more, and I'm actually being careful not to put one right here in the center, and that's because when I add my stems are going to go down here towards the bottom of my paper, and I want to make sure I don't have to do a whole lot of overlapping. But you can put your flowers wherever they work. That is completely up to you, and if you end up with your circles in a different place, that works as well. The other thing that I want you to do is way down here at the bottom of your paper, I want you to put a little mark that only you can see. I'm going to make mine a little bigger and darker so that you can see it on my paper. Just a little very teeny tiny mark down here. This is where our stems are going to come together. Once you have these circles, you can draw your stems. I'm going to draw mine because that's what I want my younger artists to do. But if you want to go ahead and start painting your flowers, you can do that as well. Now, my younger artists, we're going to start with some very simple shapes. And the first shape that we're going to do is a half circle. I'm also going to call it a U shape or a bumpy line, all I'm going to do is on one of my circle flowers, I'm going to be drawing these half circles or these bumpy lines around the edge of my circle. So you can try to do those half circles. You can call them U's, you can call them rainbow lines, smile lines, C lines, backward C lines, but I'm going to look at them as partial circles. Another shape that you can do for your petals, but you don't have to, are rectangles or squares. I'm actually going to draw a three-sided rectangle. I know that doesn't make sense, but when I put it right up against the edge of my flower makes the fourth side. I'm going to go ahead and add rectangle or square petals if you're making them shorter. So go ahead and do another shape around your second circle. And if you really like how those look and you want to do rectangles around all of them, go for it. Or if you want to do half circles around all of them, you can do that too. Another shape I'm going to do is a triangle. How many sides does a triangle have? It has 1, 2, 3. And where it comes to a point is right here at the center of my circle. So I'm gonna go around and I'm gonna add those triangle petals. Now if I'm drawing them very large, they might run into some of my other petals, and I don't really want them to overlap. I wanna keep them separate. So I'm noticing, and you're probably noticing too, that some of my triangles are different sizes, and that is a-okay. We could do other shapes too, but I'm going to leave this circle empty, and I'm going to show you another way to create petals. So now we are ready to paint, and you'll notice I haven't added my stems yet. I'm going to just do that with paint, but we're going to start with the centers of our flowers. I'm going to start with my primary colors. So I'm getting my paints nice and wet. I'm waking them up. I'm doing that by taking a clean brush of water, waking up those paints. If you're using markers or crayons or colored pencils, you can go ahead and get started here. I'm going to do some watercolor techniques here. So the first one I'm going to do is yellow. Yellow is my weakest primary color, so I always like to use my yellow first. And I'm going to go ahead and fill that one in. Now, while it's wet, I want to do something called stippling. Stippling is when you take another color and you just make little dots with your paintbrush. So I'm going to take a damp paintbrush. I'm going to take another color. I'm going to actually take some pink, some magenta, and I'm going to just dab it inside. Do you see that paint moving as I place it onto my wet yellow paint? It kind of goes shh, and it spreads. And if your paint is wet, yours will too. Don't worry if it starts blending together. That's one of the beauties of stippling. You can also do a lot more of it. I like to watch it spread out to see what it looks like. I'm going to keep going with some of my other primary colors. Another primary color is blue. And I'm going to leave this blue just like that. I'm going to go in with another primary color. This is red. So my three primary colors, the three most important colors on the color wheel, red, yellow, and blue. Those colors help to make all the other colors on my color wheel. I'm going to show you one more neat watercolor technique. My water isn't super clean right now, but you're still not gonna be able to see it very well. I'm going to just paint with some plain old water into this fourth circle. And I'm going to show you what is called the wet on wet technique. I'm going to use that stippling again, and I'm going to make that yellow spread just a little bit in that wet circle there. And I'm going to take a second color. I'm actually going to take a little turquoise, a little different color blue. But you could take another primary color like red or blue, and I'm going to just dab some of that in any of those empty spots. So this wet on wet here, do you see what is happening? The yellow and the blue are blending and mixing together to form green. It's one of our secondary colors. I'm also looking here where I did some stippling, and I'm seeing this beautiful mixture and swirl of paint there. You can do the stippling in all of your flower centers if you'd like to, or you can leave them plain. That is completely up to you. I'm going to take a little bit of that pink again and put it inside my blue, and it's going to turn into a violet purple color. You can do whatever you would like to. Once you're done with that, it is up to you to paint the petals of your flowers, and you may use whatever colors you want to. I generally tell my students to please stay away from the black and the brown, just because it muddies up our water very easily. But you can really add whatever colors you'd like to. So you decide, go ahead and paint your petals. I'm going to show you one more thing around this bottom flower, and then I'll let you finish up before I show you the last few steps. So on this last flower, I am going to get some paint on my paintbrush. You see that? I've got it nice, it was a nice juicy turquoise there. This is another way to do petals, one of my favorite ways. I'm going to take that metal part and push it onto the edge of my circle, and I'm going to go dab, 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 dab. And since the center of my circle is still wet, look and see what's happening there. Some of the colors of the center of my flower are blending into those petals, and it creates a really neat and interesting effect. I went around my orange petals because I know, you might not know, but I know that if I mix orange and turquoise, it kind of turns like a brownish grayish color. So I'm going to try to keep them unmuddied. So go ahead and finish your petals, do them whatever shapes and whatever colors you would want to, and then I'll come back and show you the rest. Okay, we're back to finish up this project. So next, if you look at the paper so far, you'll see, hopefully you have all of your beautiful flowers done with nice, bright, beautiful colors. Remember, we put that little mark down here at the bottom of the paper, and that is for our flower stems. So I'm gonna wake my green up, and I'm going to make a stem on all of my flowers, and I'm gonna bring them all down to that one point down there at the bottom of my paper. I want them all to meet down there so that when we add the hands holding the bouquet, I have a good place for my hands to come together. So you can do that. If you wanted to add any leaves on your flowers, I'm going to use that stamping technique again, where I just press my paintbrush onto my paper to create leaves onto my stems, but you do not have to. You can leave those stems empty if you'd like to. I'm going to put that aside to dry, and again, I'll give you a couple options. Option number one is to cut out hands, so it looks like your hands are holding the bouquet of flowers. But if you don't have that ability, you can also just trace your hand right onto that paper before you add the stems. Before you add the stems, you'll want to trace your hand. Now, if you trace a hand, so I borrowed my daughter's hand, she's got a nice small one there. If you trace your hand, I recommend doing it on a piece of folded paper so that when I go to cut this hand out, I only have to cut it once. If you are one of my younger artists, please ask somebody to trace your hand for you. Or if you're good at tracing hands, but maybe not your own, you can ask to trace one of your family members' hands like I did. So one thing that I like to do when I'm cutting out hands is I go right around the edge of my fingers. Now remember, I have two papers there because I folded my paper in half. Once I have those, then I can use my scissors to go around and in the middle of each finger. And that might make it a little bit easier for you to do. Okay? So go ahead and decide, are you going to trace your hand right on the paper? Are you going to leave your bouquet all by itself with no hands? Or are you going to trace your hands onto another colored paper and then cut out? So now I have my 2 hands here and I'm ready to put them onto my project. Now my project happens to be a little bit wet still, but I'm going to go ahead and show you what I would do. So first of all, I'm going to look to see where I see my pencil lines or my marker lines. I don't really want to see that on my paper, so I'm going to make sure that hand is, or that side of that hand is facing downward. I'm going to put my 2 hands together. I'm actually going to make them overlap to make it look like they're almost holding on to each other or holding the bouquet or clasping the hands together. After I decide where I want them, you can use glue out of a bottle, you can use a glue stick, put a little bit of glue down so that they are attached, so that they don't go anywhere, so you know where they're supposed to be. Now, if you've done a card like I have done, you could just cut the edges right off the side. If you just have an individual piece of paper, you can just take that edge and fold it over and glue it onto the back. That would be lovely as well. Now, a bonus if you have a skin tone piece of paper so it looks realistic. I don't have any here in the Bierman house, so if I were at school, I would have given my students a skin tone piece of paper. But this works out beautifully and you're left with a beautiful piece of art or a bouquet to give to someone in your life to celebrate their love, maybe moms for Mother's Day and all the hard work that they do every day. And I hope you enjoyed creating this artwork based on Pablo Picasso. One last thing before I go, if you did trace your hand like this, you certainly could use crayons or paints to fill that in with color, but you're still left with this beautiful piece of artwork. If you have moms or dads who aren't afraid to get your hands dirty with a handprint, you could also paint the palm of your hand and you could do a handprint on top of here as well. Those are some ideas for you. Make it however makes you happy. Just have fun creating. Try to create art every week, if not every day, and I will see you next time. Bye, everybody.